Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 21st of November 2013. So in today's news we have a little bit of an interview with Chris Metzen, then a whole bunch of tweets on flying, and then some talk about the different connected realms that are going on in the US and the EU. So first of all, Metzen. Well, this was an interview that was conducted by, I'm not too sure who by, but yeah, it was Player Cuts, that was it. And it's pretty cool. Most of it's about lore and story, which is what you'd expect from something with Metzen. So let's get into it. First of all, he said that Emerald Dream, it was the sort of thing where they talked about it a lot and they thought it could be a cool idea, but the biggest issue was that the whole, an entire expansion worth of zones being centered around one forest theme would just essentially be very boring. And I know they can have different kinds of forest, but the whole point of the Emerald Dream is that it's Azeroth before humans and basically just life and the Titans, etc. came and did things to it. So it is essentially all just forest. If you look at modern, our Earth today, any of the more temperate places were essentially these giant forests. Like the UK, big old forest. So yeah, there couldn't really be a lot of variation in zones there. They said that, well, he did say that it could be used as a zone or a raid in the future, and that would be quite cool. I think that's the best way of incorporating this zone because it is rather interesting, it does have some cool lore behind it, and it would be nice to see some places that we know in-game, but without the touch of the different mortal or immortal races messing around with them. Another problem is that the main story element with the Emerald Nightmare has actually been solved, and the Emerald Nightmare was created, I think it was created by N'Zoth, but there was this guy, not Xavius, or he had some sort of name like that, and he was dealt with in a novel called Stormrage by Knack. Apparently it was a pretty decent novel, from what I hear. But yeah, essentially, there ain't going to be much Emerald Dream going on. Next, we have Warcraft 4, and it's not planned at the minute, which, I mean, it's what we probably all would have expected, but it is a little bit sad. Warcraft 3 was such a, just in so many different levels, a fantastic game. It was one of those RTSs that managed to do story fantastically and build up really great characters. Very hard to do that on an RTS, by the way. It had a great story, it looked pretty cool, and a nice art style. It played really well. Personally, I prefer the StarCraft. I don't really like the the StarCraft way of doing things. I'm not a big fan of heroes in an RTS, but I just still, Warcraft 3 is one of those games I really love. And to have 4 would be great. And especially to have 4, just an RTS with today sort of Blizzard, I think that would be really cool. And it would also be nice to get all the different, more story-based cinematics that we get sprinkled throughout the game. But, of course, they would be the amazing-looking Blizzard-style ones that we know from today. So that would have been great, but hey, it's not on the plan at the minute. And given Blizzard usually takes, I'd say, about 7 years for a game like that. If you look nowadays, 6 or 7 years. And it's November 2013 now, so the earliest you would ever see this is 2020. And that is if they literally just came up with the plan today. And I don't really think that's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, it might be quite a while before we get onto Warcraft 4. They did say, however, and some good news, that in BlizzCon that they're planning on making modern PC-friendly versions of the classic Blizzard games, so that would include, that includes Warcraft 1 and 2, so we will be able to replay them. Perhaps they'll make 1 or 2 more sort of things to make it a little bit more user-friendly, so maybe selecting more than 10 units at once or something like that. But anyway, cool stuff. Next, the Warcraft movie. They said that it's still in casting, so yeah, still in casting. I heard some people talking about Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell's great, so I'd be happy to have him on board. And there was also a rumor about Paula Patton. I had no idea who she is, and the first video I found of her on the internet was about twerking, so I wasn't really too keen on the whole thing, but hey, whatever, she could be good. It's Duncan Jones. He usually works quite well with actors, and I think he'll be able to get very good performances out of people. And I don't think they'll fudge it up on a casting perspective, I really don't. Next up, they said about the movie, well, Metzen said, that one of the central themes of the movie is the Orcs' corruption by the Legion. Now, what's interesting here is the 2 main characters are Ardra Tom and Lothar. Now, Ardra Tom was the one orc who did not drink the demon blood. He was warned by, essentially, Ner'zhul noticed what was going on, that he'd sort of doomed his people, and he tried to tell the different clans, whoa, blood from Manaroth, really bad, don't drink it, please, you'll fuck yourself. And of course, all the other orcs were like, it's power, I'm taking it. Apart from Drutan, who is, of course, one of the main characters. So the Orcs' corruption, and I think there'll probably be a lot of interplay between the different orcs. Now, mainly this movie is going to be set in Azeroth, so I'm not really too sure how that will work out, but yeah, we still need to find more information. We know so little about this movie, and that's fair enough because the thing's coming out in 2 years' time, so that's understandable. Next, he said that the first few expansions burn through villains very fast, and that a lot of things like Garrosh and there are a few other characters, they were set up to be compelling characters later on. Now, I think with Garrosh, this probably worked really well for Horde players because they got to see him in the Grand. Basically, he's been there since the Burning Crusade. For Alliance players, we saw him once or twice in Northrend, where he was just a bit of a dick. And then we saw him being a full-on dick in Cataclysm, and then being a full-on ultra dick in Mists of Pandaria. So there wasn't really a giant character arc there for us. But for the Horde people, they did have a compelling character and a character arc and that sort of thing. I'm thinking that perhaps they're trying to do that to us with Anduin, but Anduin's just a terrible character at the minute. He's been put through some stuff that just, I know he really is striving to be neutral and all that sort of thing, but things just get to the point where they're ridiculous and that they're not, that he's not a believable character. Everything, like, there's one time in the Temple of the White Tiger where a lot of this shit that happened is his fault, because he's the guy who let all the Horde in, essentially got the Celestials to agree to letting the Horde into the Vale, and he was there with this Tauren Paladin guy, and Anduin was like, oh yes, all of our races can go because in the inside we're all great, and then the Tauren turned around to him and was like, really? You know who's in charge of our crowd? And then thus Anduin is responsible for the shit that went down. I just think he's a crap character, and this really leads us on to the next point where Rathian and Anduin are characters to watch going forward, and that Metzen would like Anduin to be king. Metzen, don't go on a lore bender with Anduin, he's a shit character. You need to break him first. And when I say break him, I don't mean break him because he's already a broken character, but they need to break his air of relentless neutrality. I get it, he wants to be neutral, but when a character isn't influenced by the things that happen to them, then they're not a good or believable character. So in my opinion, what has to happen is Velen has to die, because Velen is like the one person that Anduin, I don't know, maybe his father as in terms of a personal thing, but I think in terms of ideals and stuff like that, Velen's probably the one person that Anduin holds in very high regard. So if Velen gets killed, I think that will make Anduin snap. And then of course there is the prophecy of Velen where Anduin apparently leads the Army of the Light against the Burning Legion, which could be cool, but they just need to make him an interesting character before that happens. And then he also said that Rathian's going to be a character to watch going forward. I think that's cool. Rathian is he's not morally grey actually. All he wants to do is make sure the planet of Azeroth is safe from demons and evil shit. And because of that, we are merely tools to him, so he doesn't particularly give a shit about any of the mortal races or what happens to them. Which means that he can be a little bit of an interesting character. I thought the Legendary Quest was quite entertaining. Well, not the quest itself, but the lore behind it, and I think Rathian's voice acting was actually quite good. And the whole, Black Dragon thing, but it's weird, he's only 3 years old, but of course, he's a dragon, so it's a bit different. And I don't know, I just think that all worked out quite cool. They also said that there's a new character in Warlords of Draenor called, well, it's spelled Y-R-E-L, so Rel, I suppose. And she is a native priestess, a Draenei, who becomes an Alliance hero during the course of the conflict in Warlords of Draenor. And she's been compared to Joan of Arc, and she has some pretty cool concept art. I'm happy enough. A lot of the people who were complaining about not a lot of strong female characters, well, there's one of them. I'm sure there'll be plenty more. Alright, so how I managed to talk about those few different points for 8 minutes, I have no idea. So let's move on to flying and tweets. And yes, it's the usual affair, but there's always a little bit more added, and this is just Twitter, Ghostcrawler chatting and that sort of thing. First of all, they said that they don't believe there needs to be a lore reason for everything, because they're a gameplay first company and that's their design philosophy, and I think this philosophy usually does do them justice. And the whole flying thing, it's because they think it'll make a better game, not because there's some sort of temporal displacement field due to the time travel, blah blah blah. No, it's really just there because they think it's going to make a better game. They said the flying does not make leveling quicker, and instead it makes it trivial, and I can see where they're coming from. In Warlords of Draenor, they described leveling as being fun and fast-paced romp through zones. So when designing the zones, they will have no flying in mind. It won't really feel... You won't have a lot of the traditional issues with always being on the ground where you're in the Dread Waste and you're being attacked by a million things at once and it's just not fun. That won't be a thing. And of course the actual pace of leveling, they said it will be faster than Mists of Pandaria. I think they absolutely learned their lesson on that one. So in terms of it being, like, making things trivial, well, say there's a quest where you need to free a prisoner from a fort. Fair enough. Well, whether it's a fort or not doesn't really matter when you can fly. You just land on top of the cell and free the guy. There's no interesting gameplay there. It makes things go from coordinate X to coordinate Y with nothing interesting in between. And they said that while they agree that flying is convenient, but they argue that it's not a fun or compelling experience, and it isn't a fun or compelling experience. What is fun about flying from place X to place Y? You might argue that, well, it's the thing that you do at place X or place Y that's the fun thing, but I think that there's something inherently lost from that fun when it's just the sort of thing you can near instantly appear to with no real peril or anything. It's about making the world dangerous, so that when you're traversing, your actual traversal matters. And you feel, oh, great, well, that was pretty cool on this. When I was traveling to this quest hub, I was attacked by this, like, giant world boss giant, but it was great because I was able to get away from it. And while I was running down the road, I ran into one of their dynamic events that they're putting in, or I ran into a cool treasure that was underneath a tree stump or something. They can do more shit like that when you're on the ground. They can't do that when you're on the air. So, yeah, basically by concentrating everything on the ground, they can do a lot more interesting things, like hitting treasures, dynamic events, and that sort of thing. And they said that game design, much like art, is not about having a intense experience 100% of the time. You need a background upon which the epic stuff can stand against, and that's why there's things like travel, easy flight repairs, and that sort of thing. They're all a part of the experience, and while you may miss things in the short term, over the long term, it will feel like the game has less depth. That's true. Imagine something like, I don't know, Skyrim, as an example. Imagine if you could fast travel from anywhere to anywhere, and, okay, you can do that, but imagine if you could do that in a dungeon, in a fort, somewhere like that. Then it gets to the point where your gameplay is really being impeded there, and the game is having less depth, because you can just jump from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon while you're inside the dungeon. You know what I mean? If you take, like, Pokemon, sometimes people think, oh, Pokemon, god damn it, the tedium, I keep on having random things jumping out from the grass and trying to kill me. Well, first of all, there's the leveling mechanic, but also, it's just the fact that there needs to be stuff in between places, I suppose. It's just a very important part of making a cohesive world that feels like it's alive and not just this series of interconnected coordinates that you want to go to as quickly as possible on your magical flying thing. So, yeah. They also said they do not believe that anti-air units are the solution to this problem, and I actually agree with this. Anytime there's been an anti-air unit, it's been damn annoying. Even from the days when you'd be flying over Wintergrasp, and instantly you'd alt-tab back to the game and realize, oh shit, I was dismounted because it's Wintergrasp. That's not fun. If we move on to something like Dominance Hold or Lion's Landing, when you're flying around there in a mount, it's not fun to, like, stop for 1 second and be bombarded by loads of cannons. It's just not fun. That was already an experiment of implementing this, and it just wasn't cool. So, there you go. Let's move on to Connected Realms. First of all, for the USA, these are the ones that are going up on the 25th of November. Ashara and Aslagor, something like that. Aragos and Lane, Karn and Pernold. Well, I'm really bad at pronunciation. Nathrazim and Nubarak, Chromagus, Garithos, Smolderthorn, Winterhoof and Kilrog, Zangermash and Hellscream. And then on the 2nd of December, Coilfang and Dark Iron, Fenris and Dragonblight, Icecrown and Malagos, Stormspire is being added to Drakthron, Firetree, Malor and Riverdare, and Ysondra is being added to Magverodon. For the future in America, we're having Andorhal being added to Ursin, Crush Ridge being added to Anubarak, Chromagus, Garithos, Nathrazim and Smolderthorn, Daromir is being added to Windrunner, Keldora is being added to Senjin, and Velen is being added to Eonar. And finally, to round it off for the Europeans, Uldum is being added to Shendalar and Zul'jin, Boulderfist is being added to Chromagus and Shattered Halls, Rajax is being added to Anithrion, Amagan is being added to Emerus, Hakar, Crush Ridge, Terrador is being added to Dethicus, Mugthal, Teredas, and Alexstrasza is being added to Netherstorm. They're the ones they said that will be up quite soon. And finally, for the ones that are in the future but are not currently, they don't currently have solid dates, Executus is being added to Burning Steppes and Korgal, Venture Company is being added to Sporgar, Scarshield Legion, Irithai is being added to Naxxramas and Temple Noir, Dagger Spine's being added to Boulderfist, Chromaga's Shattered Halls, Area 52 is being added to Unguro, and Thunderhorn is being added to Wildhammer. So that's it for the Connected Realms. All in all, pretty good stuff. It's nice to see some of those realms getting to be a decent size. Hopefully those players will be seeing an increase in the amount of people they run into. The other video today will be a Q&A, and I'll be getting started on lore again over the weekend, so that's all good. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.